civilians. But yes, they do get hurt within this war,
right,
since Hamas is embedded within
we're slightly
the population. Don't forget that Hamas has missile launchers.
I haven't forgotten it. I want to ask about the hostages, because
schools and kindergartens and homes.
I want to ask you about the hostages, because you are the leader of the lobby for releasing the remaining hostages.
This interview starts calmly, but it doesn't stay that way for long. We're about to watch an Israeli MP face increasingly difficult questions from a British journalist about Israel's actions in Gaza, and instead of simply answering them, the conversation quickly becomes tense, with interruptions, pushback, and some very heated exchanges. The questions are uncomfortable, but that's exactly why they matter. Because when powerful political figures are challenged on issues this serious, the answers, and sometimes the refusal to give them, can reveal a lot. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now let's get into the interview.
Let's talk about all that and a lot more with Shelley Tal Meron, a Knesset member for the centrist Israeli Yesh Atid party, who leads the lobby for releasing the remaining hostages in the Gaza Strip. Shelley, great to have you with us here on LBC this afternoon. Let's just start with that incident and your response to it, if we could. It's another act of violence against the civilian population of Gaza.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. You know, the situation in Gaza is very complicated. It's been 648 days since this war started. We still have 50 hostages in Gaza, among them one woman. We'll speak about that shortly, I believe. When it comes to what's happening in Gaza, you know, we've been bringing tons and tons of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. It's very complicated, the distribution of the humanitarian aid, since Hamas is very much embedded within the civil, the population within Gaza. And so sometimes when it comes to the distribution, there are lines where Hamas is among the civilians, and things can happen. Now, I can tell you, you know, I'm a member of the opposition. I don't represent the Israeli government.
Sure.
But I can tell you that, you know, we just had a poll in Israel saying that over 82% of the Israeli people want to end this war and have our hostages back and have an agreement for a ceasefire. I want to end the war, not only a ceasefire.
Sure, and we will talk a lot about hostages.
So the Israeli public wants this war to end. I think it's in the best interest not only of the state of Israel, but also for the people of Gaza and the entire region.
Given that, as you say, the majority of Israelis want this war to end, what's your view on why it's still ongoing and looks to have no sign of stopping anytime soon?
Well, you know, it's also complicated. Of course, we have the prime minister and the cabinet making the decision when it comes to the ceasefire. Listen, you know, when it comes to Hamas is a terror organization, right? You know, doing negotiations with a terror organization is not exactly easy. No,
it's not easy. But do you think your prime minister could have brought this conflict to an end a lot sooner than he has?
Well, for me, I think that this war should have ended a long time ago, and I think that the agreement should have been brought earlier. I think we just had, you know, the war with Iran just recently. And of course, when it comes to the war with Iran, I completely justify the government for fighting with Iran, because it's an existential threat to the state of Israel.
In terms of Gaza,
when it comes to Gaza, I'm saying out loud that I think that this war should have ended sooner. I think it's in the best interest of Israel to end this war, to bring the hostages, start rehabilitating our country, and also start rebuilding a new entity in the Gaza Strip for the day after, since nobody wants Hamas to control the Gaza Strip. Of course, not when it comes to the security side of it, and not the civil life in Gaza.
Obviously, an arrest warrant has been issued in relation to your country's prime minister. You are an opponent of Benjamin Netanyahu. Shelley, I appreciate that. Do you believe that he is a war criminal?
No, and let me say this. You know, I'm an opponent. I have a lot of criticism when it comes to Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government, but I think it's despicable to put the prime minister of a democratic country in the same line as the heads of Hamas, which is a terror organization. And therefore, of course, I don't support these arrest warrants. I think that Israel is not doing a good enough job with telling our story, our perspective, what is happening in the Israeli side of things. You know, I'm a mother of two daughters. My two daughters, the oldest one is 18 and the other one is 15. We've been running to shelters for almost 2 years, a few times a day. It's not normal also for the Israeli side. We had hundreds of missiles being fired at us from Iran
Sure.
just in the recent few weeks.
But
So this is
children
not
being
an
blown
easy
up while queuing for
situation.
water, of course it's not normal. And anyone in their right mind would condemn that and condemn Hamas as an organisation. But children being blown up while queuing for water or food is not normal either, or justifiable, I would suggest.
Listen, when it comes to civilians, of course, I don't want any civilian to get hurt. I don't want civilians
An
to be
awful lot haven't
starved.
just been hurt, they've been an awful lot, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of innocent Palestinians are dead and have
So
been
let-
killed by your military.
But let me just say this. First of all, let us all remember that the numbers that are being put out there by Hamas, they're not exactly numbers that we can trust, right? This is a terror organization.
Shelley, come on.
and-
Nobody disputes it's thousands upon thousands of thousands. I didn't put a specific figure on it, but nobody in their right mind, including the IDF, by the way, disputes that we are talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of civilian dead.
So let me just answer that if I can.
Sure.
Listen, I served in the Israeli Air Force for 7 years. I was a captain in the Israeli Air Force, and I took part in many operations. When I sat at the ops room where you control an operation and a civilian would come close by or a child, we would stop the operation immediately. The IDF obeys by the international law. This is a democratic country. We do our best not to harm civilians. It's not in our interest to harm civilians. Yes, civilians get hurt. It's horrible. War is horrible and ugly. And I feel sorry for any civilian that gets hurt.
If it's true
But
that
please remember that on October 7th, we were invaded by thousands of terrorists.
Absolutely.
And they butchered and raped and killed entire families. They took
Of course, Shelley. And again,
people as hostages
of course.
to the tunnels in
And
Gaza.
we will talk about the hostage
still
in
have
just a
50
moment.
hostages.
We will talk about the hostage, I assure you, in just a couple of minutes' time. But just on the issue with Gaza, you say the IDF abides by international law. Why do so many international law experts across the world, therefore, why have so many of them come out and said not only have war crimes been committed, but they believe that Israel is conducting genocide in Gaza? Why have so many of them said that?
I think that the word genocide, when it comes to the IDF, is completely unacceptable. This war was imposed on Israel. We did not want this war. And I've said earlier, I'm an opposition member and I support the end of this war. But that does not make our IDF soldiers criminals. Nobody intends to kill civilians. You know, our belief, our values, our liberal democratic values. We sanctify the living, not the dead. And that sets us apart from the jihadists, the fundamentalistic, and of course, exactly like the regime in Iran, which is a fanatic
The
regime.
reports in
Do not
Israeli
compare
newspaper
them.
Haaretz from Israel, serving members of the IDF, saying they had been ordered to kill civilians. Those reports are false.
I believe they're completely false. You know, my daughter is a soldier. She was enlisted 4 months ago. I know my daughters. I know her morals. I know the way that she was taught. There is no way that our soldiers are deliberately trying to kill civilians. That is unacceptable in any way. And of course, if something that is not supposed to happen, it should be interrogated. We should check it out. Like any democratic country, we have a judicial system and we need to take care of that. But when it comes to our army, I completely believe that we do our best not to harm civilians. But yes, they do get hurt within this war since Hamas is embedded within
we're slightly
the population. Don't forget that Hamas has missile launchers.
I haven't forgotten it. I want to ask about the hostages because
schools and kindergartens and homes.
I want to ask you about the hostages because you are the leader of the lobby for releasing the remaining hostages.
And this is where the interview becomes especially revealing. The question is simple. When Israeli officials are challenged over what is happening in Gaza, why does the conversation so often shift toward defending the broader Israeli narrative instead of directly confronting the specific criticism? Now, being critical of Israel or its government is not automatically anti-Semitic. Those are two very different things. And serious questions about military conduct, civilian casualties, humanitarian aid, and international law should be allowed to be asked without being dismissed. There is also an important historical point here. October 7th was a horrific attack, but the Israeli-Palestinian conflict did not begin on that date. So when the entire discussion is framed as though everything started there, critics understandably push back. Israel absolutely has a right to protect its citizens. But that raises the difficult question, where are the limits of self-defense when civilians are suffering on such a massive scale? And this is precisely where the debate over the word genocide becomes so intense. International organizations and legal experts have made serious allegations about Israel's conduct in Gaza. While Israel strongly rejects the genocide accusation and maintains that its military campaign is aimed at Hamas, not Palestinians as a people, that disagreement cannot simply be shouted away. It deserves scrutiny, evidence, and uncomfortable questions. Because ultimately, if governments want the public to trust their version of events, they have to be willing to answer the hardest questions, not just the easiest ones. So, what do you make of this interview? Was the journalist asking legitimate questions, or do you think Israel's defenders have a point? Let me know in the comments.